Hello everyone. A lot of you asked for part 2, and today I finally brought it to you. Thank you so much for all your support. Part 2 is finally here. But before we begin, when my alpha wife chose me, it was already too late, because by then, they weren't coming for our marriage anymore. They were coming for my baby. The first thing I heard in Ria's car was the sound of her breathing, like she was afraid if she stopped, I would disappear. The second thing I felt was my own pulse fighting the ache in my ankle and the terror under my ribs. The third thing I understood was that surviving the alley had not saved me from anything. Ria drove with both hands locked on the wheel and her jaw set hard enough to crack glass. Rain feathered across the windshield and turned the city into streaks of silver and warning lights. I sat curled in the passenger seat, with one hand over my stomach and the other wrapped around the council notice like it might bite me if I loosened my grip. Emergency maternity custody review. Omega gestation under inheritance dispute. Protective appearance required by sunrise. The words kept changing shape every time I read them. They looked like law. They felt like theft. "We're not going to the council," Ria said. My laugh came out thin and ugly. "You think I still believe you get to decide where I go?" Her fingers tightened on the wheel. "No," she said quietly. "Then don't issue orders." "I am not." I turned and stared at her profile in the dim light. "It sounds like an order." "It's a plea." That should have softened me. It didn't. The city blurred past in wet black glass while my body tried to choose between panic and exhaustion. "Where are we going?" I asked. "To a doctor I trust." "Your trusted people tracked me. This one doesn't belong to me." Everyone belonged to someone in Ria's world. Doctors belong to boards. Boards belong to money. Guards belong to names. Omega bodies belong to any system cruel enough to stamp a seal over them. Ria cut through a red light and muttered a curse when a truck horn screamed at us from the intersection. "You could have died tonight," she said. The words arrived raw and too late. "You let me run." Her face flinched like I had touched a bruise she deserved. "I thought giving you space was the least selfish thing I could do." I looked down at the notice. "And now they want my baby." Silence filled the car so fast, it felt like another impact. Ria's voice dropped to a whisper that still carried like a vow. "They will not touch her." The word hit me sideways. Her. Not it. Not asset. Not heir. Her. I pressed my palm harder to my stomach before I could stop myself. Ria noticed. Of course she noticed. Everything about her was built to detect weakness, movement, hunger, threat. Tonight she looked at my hand on my belly, as if it were the only holy thing left in the city. I turned away first. 20 minutes later, we pulled into an old brick building with no crest, no donors' names on marble, no polished steel swallowing the sky. A plain brass plaque by the side entrance read, "Calder Women's Clinic." No foundation, no PAC emblem, no council insignia, just a narrow doorway under a yellow lamp, and a woman in a dark sweater, waiting beside it with her arms folded. She was older, broad-shouldered, and smelled like peppermint and antiseptic instead of politics. Her gaze landed on me before it landed on Ria. That was the first reason I almost trusted her. "Inside," she said. Ria moved to help me out of the car. I flinched before I could hide it. Pain crossed her face so quickly, I almost missed it. She stepped back and let me open my own door. My ankle screamed when I put weight on it. The doctor was beside me instantly, not touching, only bracing the air around me like a wall. "Can you walk?" Yes. That was not confidence. It was all I had. A corner of her mouth moved. Good enough. Inside, the clinic smelled like clean linen and stubborn survival. No cameras, no assistants, no reception smiles sharpened for gossip. Just muted lights, closed doors, and a heat-safe wing marked in discreet lettering. Ria stopped at the threshold. I'll wait outside. I stared at her. You're not coming in? You don't want me there. The awful part was that she was right. The worst part was that hearing her say it made something in my chest twist anyway. Dr. Calder guided me to an exam room with soft lamps instead of fluorescents, and a reclining chair that looked built for women who had been frightened one too many times. My duffel hit the floor. The lab paper crackled in my hand. The council notice sat on the counter like a threat no one had invited. Dr. Calder read both without commentary. Then she looked at me. How far along do you think you are? 6 weeks. How certain? Campus clinic blood work. She read the line again and her expression turned flat. This stamp is forged. My head jerked up. What? She slid the paper closer to the lamp. The clinic seal is copied, she said. The signature is real, but the numbering format changed months ago. Cold washed through me. So I'm not pregnant. The doctor's eyes softened, just enough to hurt. That is not what I said. My breath stalled. She tapped the paper once. I said this record was altered. Ria's silhouette moved beyond the frosted glass of the door. I could feel her listening without entering. Dr. Calder looked at my face and made a decision. I'm doing a fresh scan. My hands started shaking. I sat back on the chair because standing felt impossible. She wrapped the cuff around my arm, checked my pulse, checked my temperature, asked about symptoms, suppressants, scent crashes, stress spikes, the night I had blacked out in my apartment, the courthouse kiss, the alley trigger device, the nausea, the cramps, the sharpness of fear under all of it. Each answer made the room feel smaller. Each answer made the pregnancy feel less like an accident and more like an ambush by biology and power. When she dimmed the lights and spread cool gel across my abdomen, I turned my face toward the wall. I had spent weeks being handled like evidence. I did not know how to survive tenderness anymore. Dr. Calder's voice stayed steady. Look when you're ready. I'm not. That was not the question. I closed my eyes. The machine hummed. Static flickered. Then a sound cracked open the room. Fast, tiny, determined. My whole body went still. I turned before I meant to. On the monitor, a blur pulsed like a secret refusing to stay hidden. That, Dr. Calder said gently, is a heartbeat. The world narrowed to one impossible rhythm. Alive. Mine. Hers. Ours. No, I thought instantly, because even in my panic, I was not ready to surrender language to her. But the thought had already happened. Tears burned hot and humiliating. I covered my mouth. Dr. Calder lowered the sound without muting it completely. Your pregnancy is real, she said. Estimated just over 6 weeks. My hand found my stomach again. There was nothing to feel there yet. Nothing but fear and a softness I didn't trust. She's okay? The doctor looked at the screen. For now. 2 words had never sounded so cruel. For now? You're under severe stress. I noticed. Her expression didn't change. Your suppressants were inconsistent, your scent cycle was destabilized, and someone exposed you to an illegal heat trigger tonight. My stomach turned. Can the trigger hurt her? Yes. The word landed like metal. I shut my eyes. Outside the frosted glass, I heard Rhea hit the wall with the side of her fist once, and then go silent again. Dr. Calder printed the scan and handed me a tissue I didn't remember needing. Then she added the sentence that changed the night from personal terror to war. There's more. I looked up. In rare female alpha and female omega pairings, an early gestation linked to high-status inheritance lines can be challenged under old pack succession statutes. My mouth went dry. Challenged how? Her jaw hardened. Claimed. The room spun anyway, even though I was already lying down. No. I agree. No. I repeated harder, because if I stopped denying it, I might start screaming. Dr. Calder met my stare without flinching. If the council proves instability, coercion, unfit maternal protection, or disputed marital standing, they can file for conservatorship over you until birth. The air disappeared from my lungs. Conservatorship. Her face said what her mouth did not. Lockdown, medical control, monitored movement, no decisions, no freedom. My baby carried under someone else's law while they called it safety. If you're here for drama like this, subscribe to Alpha Files. The sentence would have felt absurd anywhere else. In my life, it sounded like prophecy. I laughed once, sharp and broken, and then hated myself for it. Dr. Calder handed me a second tissue. I'm sorry. For what? For telling you the truth after too many people didn't. The frosted glass door opened an inch. Rhea stood there with rain in her hair, fury in her posture, and restraint pulled tight across her face like wire. May I come in? The fact that she asked almost undid me, more than if she had walked in without permission. I looked at Dr. Calder. She looked at me. My nod was small. Rhea entered, as if stepping into a chapel built from her own mistakes. Her gaze found the printout in my hand and stopped. For one terrible second, I thought she might look triumphant. She looked devastated instead. She's all right? She asked. Dr. Calder did not answer her first. She answered me. The baby is stable tonight. Then she turned to Rhea. She stays off council property. That was already the plan. You no longer get plans, the doctor said. Rhea accepted that like a sentence she had earned. Understood. Dr. Calder crossed her arms. Then hear the rest. Rhea did. She heard every word about conservatorship, every word about succession law, every word about how Lyra's falsified records and Odessa's filing strategy meant this had been prepared before the alley, before the live stream, maybe before the marriage itself. By the time the doctor finished, Rhea looked less like a professor and more like a blade deciding where to fall. They filed before the emergency notice, she said. Dr. Calder nodded. Which means they expected the pregnancy. My throat closed. How? Rhea's eyes met mine and then dropped away. The ring. I froze. The wedding ring suddenly felt radioactive on my finger. They used the tracker? Not just location, Rhea said, voice rough. It carried biometric monitoring because Celine had already petitioned to challenge your guardianship history. My skin crawled. You were reading my body. I was trying to prevent this exact thing. You made me a file. Her silence answered for her. I wanted to throw the ring through the wall. I wanted to rip every mark of her name off my skin. I wanted the heartbeat from 5 minutes ago to stop making me feel weak enough to cry. Dr. Calder stepped between us with no drama, only authority. Not tonight. Rhea straightened a fraction. Doctor. Not tonight, she repeated. This room contains 1 injured Omega, 1 viable pregnancy, and 1 Alpha who has confused surveillance with protection for far too long. I had never loved a stranger faster. Rhea took the hit without defending herself. That scared me more than excuses would have. Tell me how to keep them safe, she said. Them. My throat tightened again. Dr. Calder studied her for a long moment. Resign from the Foundation before sunrise. Rhea's head snapped up. Dr. Calder kept going. Freeze every shared asset tied to the Vale succession chain. Her expression darkened. Done. Publicly state that any inheritance attached to this pregnancy will be refused. Rhea's voice went cold. That will trigger shareholder revolt. Dr. Calder's stare was merciless. Then revolt. Rhea did not hesitate this time. Done. The room went quiet. I stared at her, waiting for some flicker of calculation, some hidden angle, some strategic cost-benefit machine behind her eyes. I saw only decision. Dr. Calder noticed it too, but she was not impressed. Third, she said, she chooses where she sleeps tonight. Rhea looked at me, not around me, not over me, at me. The choice should have felt simple. It didn't. If I went back with Rhea, I returned to the orbit that had nearly swallowed me. If I ran again, the council could paint me unstable by morning. If I trusted no one, I was still an Omega with a sprained ankle, a hunted pregnancy, and nowhere safe that the law could not twist against me. I stay here, I said. Rhea's face did not change, only her breath did. Good, Dr. Calder said. She's under my medical hold for 48 hours. Rhea nodded once. You'll need security. I have my own. Not Foundation security. No. She reached into her coat and set her phone on the counter, then her wallet, then a signet pin she wore at faculty galas, then the electronic card that opened half the city for her, one by one. An offering, a stripping, a surrender I had never imagined seeing from her. I won't use any network tied to the board, she said. Dr. Calder watched her like she was deciding whether this was remorse or theater. What will you use? Rhea's gaze stayed on me. Myself. That should not have mattered. It did. 2 hours later, I sat in a private recovery room with my ankle wrapped, my scan tucked under my pillow, and a paper cup of ginger tea cooling in my hands. Rain kept tapping the window like a clock. Dr. Calder had left to arrange records and legal notices of her own. Rhea had gone to detonate her life before sunrise. I told myself I was relieved she was gone. Instead, I kept hearing the heartbeat. I kept hearing her say them. I hated that my fear now had a face smaller than grief and sharper than anger. At 3 a.m, Nurse Mara slipped into the room with circles under her eyes and a plastic bag full of toiletries she had clearly bought from the all-night pharmacy across the street. I sat up too fast. Mom? Mara smiled for the first time that night. She's sleeping. The breath I released hurt all the way down. Did she ask for me again? She asked if your curls were still impossible in the rain. I laughed and cried at the same time. Mara set the bag down and squeezed my shoulder. Rhea moved her tonight. My body went rigid. Without asking me? No. Mara's mouth softened. She left the authorization blank until I reached you through Calder. I blinked. You talked to her? She sounded like she was one bad second away from tearing the city apart. That sounded exactly like her. She transferred your mother to a private wing in Calder's network, not foundation care. Astonishment cut through some of my exhaustion. She gave up the private unit through her own foundation? Mara nodded. She said if the Vale name was attached, the council would use it. I looked down at the tea in my hands. Steam curled upward and disappeared. Mara sat on the chair by my bed and lowered her voice. There's more gossip. Of course there is. Professor Vale just resigned. My head jerked up. What? Public statement at 2:30, Mara said. She stepped down from the foundation, suspended her faculty chair, dissolved 3 donor boards, and put every personal holding tied to succession into blind charitable transfer pending external review. I stared at her. No. Not because Rhea was incapable of sacrifice, because she had always looked more likely to die in her own fortress than walk out of it. She really did it? Mara gave me a long look. You tell me. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My world had been rearranging itself by force for days. Now it was doing it through choice, and somehow that was harder to survive. Dawn came pale and ugly. The council notice did not vanish because Rhea resigned. It multiplied. By 6 a.m., every gossip feed in the city had my name, my marriage, my alley footage, and speculation about the pregnancy splashed across screens in language that turned my body into a battlefield, and my unborn daughter into a market event. Vale heir scandal. Runaway Omega under emergency protection review. Marital instability raises succession concerns. I wanted to throw the tablet at the wall. Dr. Calder took it from me before I could. Stop feeding their machine. They're writing my daughter like a press release. The doctor's eyes snapped to mine. I had said daughter, not baby, not pregnancy. Daughter. Something in me must have accepted her before the rest of me was ready. Dr. Calder said nothing about it. She simply set the tablet face down. At 8 a.m., Rhea returned wearing the same clothes, new bruises across one knuckle, and a look in her eyes I had never seen before. Not cold, not controlled. Hollowed out and burning. She stopped in the doorway like she wasn't sure she still had the right to step over thresholds I occupied. Dr. Calder crossed the room and held out a folder. Your copy. Rhea took it. What is it? Temporary injunction against emergency conservatorship, unless the Omega presents before the council physically unharmed and under voluntary status. Rhea read it once. Which means? Which means Odessa can't seize her from this clinic. Rhea exhaled slowly. For now. Dr. Calder nodded. For now. I looked from one of them to the other. You're both using that phrase too much. It's an honest phrase, Calder said. Rhea's gaze found my bandaged ankle, then the tray of toast I had barely touched, then the printout under my pillow, because apparently I was incapable of hiding anything from her. I need 5 minutes, she said. Dr. Calder looked at me. I wanted to say no. I wanted to say she had already used every 5 minutes she ever had. Instead, I nodded once because part of me was tired of having conversations through doors. Calder left. Mara followed. Rhea stayed near the wall instead of coming closer. I appreciated that more than I wanted to. I resigned, she said. I heard. I signed over the Foundation voting rights. I heard that too. I froze the inheritance path. I laughed without humor. So now they want my baby even more, because you made it look important. Pain flickered across her mouth. They wanted her before I moved. Her. Again. My body reacted before my pride could stop it, a tiny protective curl around my stomach. Rhea saw it and looked away instantly, like she had not earned the sight. I found out why Lyra knew, she said. I went still. She treated one of the lab techs from your campus clinic after a heat-related injury last month. My skin cooled. The tech recognized your name and sold access. I gripped the blanket. So my body was gossip before I even knew. Yes. Rhea's voice roughened. I had the tech arrested at dawn. That should have satisfied me. It didn't even touch the wound. You tracked me, Rhea. I know. You made decisions about my medical data without telling me. I know. You humiliated me in front of donors. Her face shuddered and cracked at the same time. I know. I hated the tears rising in my throat. I hated more that she did not step closer to comfort me, like she had any right. She simply stood there and let my pain land where it belonged. I don't know how to trust someone who calls control protection. Rhea closed her eyes for one brief second. When I was 19, the board assigned a retired alpha handler to teach me public containment. My anger faltered. I had expected excuses, not confession. She kept speaking anyway. She said affection was an exposure point. Her mouth twisted. She said if I ever loved anything visibly, the board would build a weapon around it. The room seemed to shrink around the words. So you decided never to love visibly. I decided to survive in a way that looked like obedience. My chest hurt. And then you married me. Rhea's gaze lifted to mine. And then I met you. I looked down because that sentence was dangerous, and I was too tired to fight every dangerous thing at once. When did it stop being a contract? She answered immediately. In the library. I stared. You didn't even know me. I knew you lied to your mother in a hospital room, so she could keep breathing without guilt. Ice went through me. You were there? I had someone settle a donor issue on the second floor. Shame and fury collided. You listened? No. Her voice turned raw. I heard you through a half-open door and hated myself for stopping. The room tipped again. I had thought the library was our beginning. Maybe it had been. Maybe my desperation had already been standing under her skin while I was still begging the universe for money and one more day. Rhea drew a breath that sounded costly. I don't expect forgiveness. Good. I expect you to hate me correctly. That dragged my eyes back to her. What does that mean? It means hate me for what I did, not for the parts you were manipulated into believing. I said nothing. She continued anyway. I did not choose cameras over your mother. I laughed once because that was too easy a sentence after everything. Her eyes stayed on mine. I chose speed over explanation, she said, and I was wrong. Silence widened. I saw the spoof pattern 1 second before I took the phone, she added. I should have told you in the car. I looked at her hard. Why didn't you? A long beat passed. Because if I told you I was right, it would sound like I wanted credit while you were bleeding. That answer was so infuriatingly human that I wanted to throw something again. Instead, I asked the more dangerous question. And the tracking ring? Rhea's throat worked. That has no defense. Something hot and brittle inside me cracked. I had been braced for argument, not surrender, not the simple ugliness of yes, I did it, and no, I cannot justify it. A knock sounded before I could answer. Dr. Calder re-entered with another folder and a face that warned of new damage. They moved the hearing. Ria went still. When? Today. My stomach dropped. How? Calder set the folder on the table. Odessa petitioned emergency fetal asset review under dormant PAC law. The phrase made me feel sick. I am not an incubator for an asset. No, Calder said, but the council is run by people who still think in cages. Ria reached for the folder. They'll lose. Dr. Calder's expression said she was tired of alpha certainty. They won't if Sarah doesn't appear. My mouth went dry. You said they couldn't seize me. Not from here, Calder said. But absence lets them rule by default. Ria cursed under her breath. So they force her into the room or take the child on paper. I looked at both of them. What happens if I go? Dr. Calder answered. They question your stability, your marriage, your independent support, your medical compliance, your alpha's fitness, and whether the pregnancy falls under ancestral succession claim. And if I don't? Ria said it this time. They write your future without you. The hate that rose in me was clean and cold. For Celine, for Lyra, for Odessa, for every dead elder who had written women into property and called it tradition. I looked at my ankle, then the scan under my pillow, then Ria. I'm going. Ria's entire body changed. No! I lifted my chin. You don't get to decide. If they lock the chamber doors, then break them. Sarah. You asked me to hate you correctly, I said. Then hear me correctly. My voice shook once and steadied. They are talking about my daughter while I'm still carrying her under my own heart. The word daughter hit the room like a match. Ria's jaw tightened. Dr. Calder's eyes softened. I kept going. I will not let them debate my life without seeing my face. Silence. Then Ria bowed her head once. Not agreement, acknowledgement. If you go, she said, I go in front of you. I almost laughed. They hate you more than me. Yes. And your solution is still to stand between me and bullets? Her gaze met mine. Always. The answer was so immediate, it frightened me. By noon, the city had turned bright and vicious. Calder dressed my ankle in a brace under my stockings and wrapped me in a slate-gray dress that looked severe enough to survive judgment. No donor glamour, no soft omega prettiness, no room for anyone to mistake me for decoration. Mara braided my hair back from my face with hands that shook only a little. Dr. Calder tucked a heat-safe patch against my wrist. If your pulse spikes, press here. Ria waited outside the room in black instead of charcoal. No crest pin, no foundation badge, no polished performance armor. Just the woman stripped of titles, and still dangerous enough to make halls reconsider themselves. When I stepped out, her eyes lifted and stopped. For one terrifying second I saw grief there, not because I looked beautiful, because I looked ready for war. She offered her arm. I looked at it, then at her, then away. I can walk. Her arm lowered immediately. The council chamber occupied the oldest building in the city, where arches and stone tried to make cruelty look sacred. Crowds had already gathered behind the barriers. Press drones hovered like insects over the front steps. Screens flashed my name, her name, our marriage, the pregnancy. The guards at the entrance wore council white instead of foundation black. That somehow looked worse. As we climbed the steps, microphones shouted questions sharp enough to bruise. Sarah, did Professor Vale coerce the marriage? Are you under protective threat from the Vale line? Is the pregnancy viable? Professor Vale, did you resign to shield illegal inheritance fraud? Rhea did not slow. Neither did I. At the doors, a council officer raised a hand. No legal advisors beyond registered representation. Dr. Calder stepped up. I am registered. The officer checked the slate. Approved. She pointed at Rhea. Former Chair Vale is not. The air snapped. Rhea's voice turned glacial. I am her spouse. Under review, the officer said. I felt Rhea go still beside me in a way that warned of immediate violence. I stepped forward before she could choose it. She enters, I said. The officer did not look impressed. By whose authority? I stared straight back. Mine. A ripple moved through the cameras behind us. Rhea's eyes cut to me. The officer hesitated because PAC law still liked pretending wives had no say until they used the exact tone old power respected. Noted, she said finally. The doors opened. Inside the chamber was a bowl of polished wood and old power. A ring of council seats rose in tiers. Screens hovered overhead, displaying case codes in clean white letters. At the center stood a circular platform with 3 chairs. One for the presenting Omega, one for medical counsel, one for the contesting authority. There should not have been a third chair. There was. And seated in it, with her silver hair immaculate and her smile intact, was Chairwoman Odessa Mayer. Beside the platform stood Lyra Kestrel, in cream silk and righteousness. Celine sat 1 row behind them in civilian clothes, no cuffs, no shame, and a legal advocate at her side. My blood turned to ice. I stopped walking. Rhea's voice dropped. Keep moving. How is she here? Temporary release under testimony privilege. The answer told me everything I needed to know about how rotten the room already was. Odessa watched me approach like a woman admiring an antique she planned to buy cheap from a grieving family. Mrs. Vale, she said. I did not correct the name. Not for her. Not in this room. You filed for my body like a property dispute, I said instead. A murmur swept the chamber. Odessa's smile did not move. Language, dear. No. Her eyes brightened. Good. Let her hear no. Let them all hear it. The presiding magistrate called the chamber to order. Formalities began. Case numbers, lineage citations, emergency review basis. The words moved around me like knives wrapped in velvet. Then Lyra rose. Of course she did. She carried a tablet full of falsified tenderness and stood with her spine perfect and her gaze aimed not at me, but at the chamber's appetite. This review concerns a vulnerable Omega under documented scent instability, she said, currently carrying a potentially succession-linked gestation under conditions of public distress, violent exposure, and marital uncertainty. I wanted to tear the tablet from her hands. Rhea remained still beside me, but the air around her chilled hard enough that even the nearest clerk noticed. Lyra continued. The former chair's erratic resignations this morning only strengthened the case for external protection. External protection. The euphemism made me sick. Dr. Calder stood. Objection. The magistrate glanced up. On what basis? Fraudulent medical chain, Calder said. She handed over a sealed packet. Half the records submitted by Dr. Kestrel were altered before they reached the council. Lyra did not flinch. That was how prepared she had been. By whom? The magistrate asked. Calder's gaze cut to the upper screens. Let's start with whoever deleted the original lab logs at 2:11 this morning. The screens flickered. A technician froze. Ria's jaw tightened. Then a new window opened above the chamber. Security footage. Campus lab corridor. Timestamp. A woman in council white entering a records room with Lyra's badge access. The chamber erupted. Odessa's smile thinned for the first time. Lyra turned very slightly, and in that tiny movement, I saw the first crack of panic. Ria had not moved. I looked at her. She stared ahead like this was not victory, only arithmetic. You brought evidence, I whispered. She answered without looking at me. I brought everything. The magistrate struck the gavel hard enough to echo. Order! Lyra recovered fast, too fast. Even if records were compromised, she said, that does not eliminate the risk. There it was. Not truth. Risk. They always loved risk because it let them call fear a legal theory. Then Celine rose from the row behind her. My stomach dropped. No one had invited her. No one stopped her. May I speak as familial guardian history? She asked sweetly. Ria actually stepped half a pace in front of me. The chamber noticed. So did Celine. She smiled wider. I have known Sarah since birth, she said. Then why is your first instinct always to sell me? The question left my mouth before strategy could catch it. Silence cracked down the chamber. Celine's mask flickered. Emotional instability, she said softly to the magistrate. Please note the volatility. I laughed, and this time it carried. Volatility? My voice rang harder than I expected. You threatened to pull my mother's life support. A ripple swept the seats. Celine's advocate stood instantly. Unsubstantiated. Ria moved before anyone else. She crossed to the clerk's station, keyed in an override code so fast the officer behind the desk barely had time to protest, and sent a file to the chamber screens. Audio. Hospital corridor. Celine's voice, sweet as poison. 3 days, darling. Then I signed for the first time since the hospital room. My aunt looked small. The magistrate leaned forward. Is there any response to this evidence? Celine's advocate asked for adjournment. Denied. Lyra requested exclusion. Denied. Odessa smiled again, but now it looked expensive instead of in control. Then she turned the knife the way predators always do when direct attack fails. Even if these women behaved badly, she said, the child still falls under contested succession. There it was, the true hunger. Not me, not justice, the child. Ria rose. No. The single word carried farther than Celine's venom or Lyra's polish. Odessa's gaze lifted to her. You resigned, Ria. Yes. You are no longer deciding foundation succession. I am deciding my refusal. Odessa folded her hands. You cannot refuse bloodline law. Ria's face changed. Not rage, something cleaner, more dangerous. I can refuse the fortune. A murmur broke through the chamber. Odessa's eyes sharpened. Ria reached into her coat and withdrew a final document. Not digital. Paper. Signed in wet ink. She handed it to the magistrate. I executed a full renunciation of inheritance title at 11:52 this morning. For 1 full second, no one breathed. Then the magistrate read the seal and looked stunned. Odessa stood so fast her chair scraped the floor. "You reckless girl!" Ria's smile was small and lethal. "I learned from the best." The screens updated. Veil, succession chain. Void pending dissolution. Asset line, inactive. Heir status, suspended. The chamber erupted. Press feeds outside probably detonated at that exact second. My head spun. She had done it. Not threatened, not bargained. Done. The empire they wanted my daughter for had just been set on fire. In legal language no one could reverse, in one hearing. I stared at Ria and felt something terrible shift inside me. Not forgiveness, not yet. But the shape of my certainty cracked. Odessa recovered with admirable speed for a woman whose bloodline strategy had just gone up in smoke. "Then this is not about inheritance anymore," she said smoothly. "Correct," Ria said. "It is about maternal welfare." And there it was. Plan B. They always had one. Lyra stepped back into the opening. "The Omega has been hunted, triggered, and emotionally destabilized by association with you." Ria's gaze did not move from Odessa. "Yes." The admission punched through the room. Lyra smiled. "Then you concede harm." Ria turned at last. Her eyes found mine. "Yes," she said quietly. "I harmed her." The chamber fell silent. No one in Ria's class admitted damage. Not publicly. Not under law. Not with cameras drinking every second. I forgot to breathe. Lyra stepped in like she smelled victory. "And therefore," Ria cut her off, "I harmed her through control." She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. "I mistook surveillance for care." Another silence. "Optics for protection." My throat tightened. "Authority for devotion." The magistrate stared. Odessa looked furious now. Lyra actually seemed wrong-footed. Confession was not the script she had prepared for. Ria kept going. "I am guilty of all 3. Her voice roughened, just enough to make the words feel carved from bone. "But none of that grants this chamber rights over her body or our child." Our child. The phrase landed like a spark in dry grass. My heart lurched so hard it hurt. "This Omega," Ria said, and now every eye in the room was on her, "is not a vessel for a succession line." Her gaze moved to me again. "She is my wife." Then to the magistrate. "She is her own legal person." Then to the chamber. "And our daughter will not be claimed by cowards hiding greed inside heritage law." The room broke. Some people shouted, some objected, some stared at her, like she had stepped out of the machine and announced she intended to dismantle it with her bare hands. I sat frozen in the center of it all, suddenly aware that my hands were shaking for a different reason now. Odessa's smile vanished at last. "You admit emotional conflict, surveillance abuse, and marital coercive optics?" Ria said, "Yes." Odessa turned to the magistrate. "Then separate them until further review." My blood went cold. No, no, no. The magistrate's hand moved toward the order slate. Ria looked at me, not as command, not as shield, as a question. As a surrender. It took me 1 second to understand what she was giving me. Choice. Real choice. In front of everyone. My lungs burned. If I said yes to separation, they could lock me under independent maternal review and keep her away while they dissected my life for months. If I said no, I would be choosing her in public after everything. I hated that the room had forced the decision into my mouth. I hated more that the answer rose before I could strangle it. No. The chamber stilled. The magistrate blinked. Mrs. Vale, for clarity. I said no. My voice sounded stronger now because anger had finally found a target larger than heartbreak. You do not get to cut my marriage apart to make me easier to manage. Odessa's gaze sharpened. Your marriage has already harmed you. I looked right at her. So did your law. That one hit. I stood despite the ankle brace. Pain shot up my leg. I used it. I used all of it. The hospital, the library, the cameras, the alley, the heartbeat, the room, the years of being spoken around. I am an Omega, I said, not livestock with better paperwork. A murmur shivered through the seats. I kept going. I was desperate when I married her. True. She controlled what should have been mine. Also true. She hurt me. The words cracked. Rhea closed her eyes once. I did not stop. But she does not own my no. Silence. And neither do you. Something changed then. Not legally, not yet, but morally. The room knew it. The cameras knew it. For the first time, the story was not Runaway Omega and Untouchable Alpha. It was a woman refusing every hand that tried to write her into a system she had not built. The magistrate cleared her throat. Given the presented fraud, the succession renunciation, the coercive filing conduct of the petitioners, and the direct statement of maternal autonomy, emergency conservatorship is denied. The chamber exploded again. Denied. No, for now. Denied. I almost collapsed from the force of relief alone. Odessa rose, face made of money and rage. This is not finished. The magistrate looked at her over the bench. It is for you. Odessa stilled. The magistrate's voice turned sharp. Evidence of medical tampering, witness intimidation, falsified submission channels, and predatory succession abuse will be referred for criminal review. She turned to Lyra. Your medical license is suspended, pending full investigation. Lyra actually went white. Then to Celine, your temporary testimony release is revoked. Celine surged up from her chair. You can't! The officer at her shoulder took her wrists before she finished. The sound she made was not a scream. It was fury, realizing too late that law could bite back. Odessa's advocate stepped forward. The magistrate raised a hand. Chairwoman Odessa Mare is removed from provisional influence over all pending maternal inheritance reviews, effective immediately. The chamber turned on itself. Reporters outside would be devouring every second. Odessa looked at Rhea with naked hatred. You ruined your own house. Rhea's expression did not change. It was rotten. That was the moment I knew Odessa had lost for real. Not because she was dragged out, because Rhea no longer feared losing what Odessa could touch. The hearing adjourned in chaos. Council officers tried to funnel us through a side hall. Dr. Calder pushed ahead. Mara appeared from nowhere like a nurse-shaped miracle and shoved a paper bag with crackers into my hands, because apparently survival came with blood sugar. Rhea stayed half a step to my left, close enough to intervene, far enough to honor the line I had not fully redrawn. We made it to the private exit without cameras swallowing us whole. Outside, the rain had stopped. The city looked scrubbed raw. A black SUV waited by the curb, Dr. Calder turned to me. Clinic or hospital? Hospital. Ria's gaze lifted sharply. You're sure? My mother woke up. Nothing in the world mattered more than that sentence. Ria nodded immediately. Hospital. No argument, no strategy, just yes. The drive there was quiet, in the strange way war can go quiet after the verdict, but before the grief catches up. Mara sat in the front with Calder. I sat in the back with a paper bag in my lap and my hand on my stomach. Ria sat beside me, not touching, her body angled just enough to make a shield if the world came through the windows. For the first time since City Hall, the silence between us did not feel like a weapon. It felt like a wound being acknowledged. At the hospital, Mara took me through a staff entrance and up a private elevator to a room that smelled like warm blankets instead of disinfectant and fear. My mother was propped against the pillows, pale and fragile, and alive enough to roll her eyes when she saw me. There you are, she whispered. The sob tore out of me before I could stop it. I crossed the room on a bad ankle and fell carefully to my knees by her bed. She touched my hair with trembling fingers. My dramatic girl. I laughed and cried harder. Behind me, the room stayed quiet. My mother's gaze shifted past my shoulder. She saw Ria standing in the doorway, like a woman who knew she did not deserve to step further. My mother smiled, the tired smile of someone who had survived more than one predator wearing silk. So, she murmured, this is the wife. Heat flashed through my face. Ria inclined her head. Yes, ma'am. My mother looked at the brace on my ankle, the strain in my face, and the rawness in Ria's eyes. She missed nothing. Did you break her heart before or after you saved her life? I actually choked on a laugh. Ria did not. Both, she said. My mother studied her for a long moment, honest at last. Then she squeezed my fingers. Good. I looked up. Good? My mother's mouth curved faintly. Only women who know they've done wrong answer that fast. Ria absorbed the judgment without defense. Again. That should not have mattered. It did. My mother's hand slid from my hair to my cheek. You look tired enough to sleep for a year. I can't. You can later. Her fingers drifted lower, stopping over my hand, where it rested on my stomach. Her eyes widened just enough to show she already knew. Mara told you. She told me enough. My lips trembled. I'm scared. I know. What if I do everything wrong? My mother smiled, sad and fierce. Then you'll be a mother. Something inside me broke open in the gentlest possible way. I leaned my forehead against the bed and cried until I had no dignity left to lose. When I finally stood again, Ria was still by the door, still waiting, still not assuming. My mother watched us both, like she could see every thread neither of us knew how to name. You two need to speak, she said. My body tensed. She noticed. Of course she noticed. She looked at me first. Not as prey and protector. Then at Ria. Not as penance and judge. Then back to both of us. As women who intend to survive the same child. Ria's breath caught. Mine did too. My mother closed her eyes like she was done carrying us for now. Mara adjusted the blankets. Calder checked a line. The room breathed. I turned toward the door. Ria followed me into the hallway and stopped at a distance that felt deliberate. The corridor was dimmer here, quieter. No cameras, no board, no counsel. No excuses left to hide behind. I destroyed the succession chain, she said. I nodded. I know. I transferred the remaining assets into a maternal legal defense fund under your name and your mother's medical trust. My head lifted. You put it under my name? And Calder's oversight until you choose otherwise. That landed somewhere deep, something between apology and proof. I folded my arms across myself because suddenly I felt too open. You don't get points for finally understanding I should own my own life. No. Ria's gaze stayed on mine. I get consequences. The words moved through the hallway and settled there, real, heavy, earned. I swallowed. What happens to the foundation? It survives without me, or it doesn't. And the university? I offered my resignation. Shock cut through the exhaustion. Offered? The Board of Regents refused. Of course they did. A public martyr alpha was worth more than a clean scandal. I almost smiled, despite myself. Ria noticed. The corner of her mouth moved like she had forgotten that expression still existed. I looked away first. I'm still angry. You should be. I still don't trust you. I know. And I still remember the cameras. Her face tightened. I know that too. Silence pooled between us. Then she said the sentence I needed and hated, and had not realized I was still waiting for. I am sorry for humiliating you. Not, I regret the optics. Not, I chose poorly. Not, I was protecting you. I am sorry. Plain, sharp, late. My throat burned. Ria kept going. I am sorry for monitoring your body without consent. Another blade. I am sorry for using marriage as a shield and forgetting the woman inside it. My eyes closed briefly. I am sorry that your first experience of being chosen by me also felt like being managed by me. When I opened my eyes again, hers were bright in the harsh hallway light. Not tears. Ria did not do tears where other people could see them, but enough to tell me how much it cost her not to look away. I love you, she said. The world did not stop. No thunder cracked. No music rose. No cinematic mercy softened the edges. It just landed. Simple as damage. Brutal as truth. My breath left me all at once. Ria stood there, stripped of title and strategy and armor, and did not dress it up in poetry. I loved you before I knew what to call it, she said. I loved you badly. Her mouth shook once. I do not want points for saying this now. Good. I want you to know that what I burned this morning was not sacrifice. Her gaze held mine. It was overdue. That sentence hit harder than the confession, because it meant she was not offering me a crown built from ashes and asking gratitude for it. She was naming rot, and finally choosing to leave it. I leaned back against the wall because my ankle hurt, my chest hurt, and the baby under my heart had somehow become the center of a universe I no longer recognized. I can't promise anything tonight. Ria nodded once. Then don't. I can't go back to the penthouse. You won't. I can't wake up tomorrow and pretend all of this turned into a love story because you finally said the right words. Her face did not change. It hasn't. That honesty made it worse. And better. Both at once. I looked down the hall toward my mother's room, and then back at Ria. I will let you stay. Her breath caught. Near me, I said. Not over me. Yes. You do not track me. Never again. You do not make medical decisions for me. Never again. You do not speak for me unless I ask. Yes. I took a slow breath. And if you want to be part of our daughter's life, you earn it in front of me, not around me. Something passed through her face then. Not relief, something gentler. Something like reverence. Yes. I believed she meant it. That was not the same as trust, but it was a beginning. My phone buzzed in my bag. For one ugly second, every muscle in my body seized. Ria noticed. Of course she noticed. I pulled the phone out myself. No council seal, no threat. Just a news alert. Council suspends succession clause after emergency review scandal. PAC law reform hearings announced. Odessa under investigation. Lyra's medical board freezes her license. Celine Voss remanded pending criminal charges. I stared at the screen, a whole war compressed into headlines. Ria watched my face. Show me? I hesitated, then handed her the phone. Her eyes scanned the alert once. The smallest exhale left her. Not victory. Exhaustion. We did that, I said before I could stop myself. Her gaze lifted. You did that. No, not just me. Not just her either. A broken Omega, a ruthless Alpha, a tired doctor, a stubborn nurse, a mother who refused to die on anyone else's timing. But I did not say any of that. Instead, I took my phone back and slid it into my pocket. The hallway window caught the late afternoon light and turned it gold across the floor. The first calm of the last 2 days settled around us, awkward and fragile, and very far from secure. Ria shifted her weight slightly. My eyes dropped. Her knuckles were still bruised. Without thinking, I reached for her hand. The moment my fingers touched her skin, both of us went still. I should have let go. I didn't. Her hand was warm, careful, steady, despite everything. I turned it over and saw the split skin across her knuckles. What happened? I met a board member's desk at speed. A laugh slipped out of me before I could stop it. Ria blinked. Then, impossibly, so did she. The laugh sat between us like a tiny bridge neither of us trusted to hold. But it existed. I took the small tube of ointment from Mara's pharmacy bag and unscrewed the cap. Ria looked at me like I had offered her a second life. This is not forgiveness, I said. I know. This is first aid. She gave the smallest nod. I dabbed ointment over the bruise. She did not flinch. Neither did I. When I was done, I closed her fingers gently around the tube and stepped back. Inside my mother's room, Mara called my name softly. I turned toward the door, then stopped. Ria waited. Always waiting now, learning it the hard way. I looked at her one last time before going back inside. You were too late, I said. The truth of it hung there, sharp, undeniable. Ria's face tightened, but she did not look away. I know. I took a breath. But you came anyway. Her eyes changed. That was all. Not absolution, not romance. Just a door unlocked, one click instead of all at once. I went back into my mother's room and watched the evening settle across the blankets and the monitors and the women who had helped me survive myself. Later, after Mara bullied me into eating half a sandwich, and Dr. Calder bullied me into taking my medication, and my mother bullied me into lying down on the couch by the window, I woke to quiet. Real quiet. No alarms, no sirens, no council notices. The room was dim except for city lights beyond the glass. My hand moved instinctively to my stomach. Still there. Still ours to protect. Across the room, Ria sat in a straight-backed chair by the door. Not sleeping. Not crowding. Just there. A sentry with no title left but the one she was trying to earn. My mother was asleep. Mara had gone home. Calder had finally left after threatening all of us with bodily harm if we skipped follow-up scans. I watched Ria in the low light. She must have felt it, because she looked up. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then she stood, crossed half the room, and stopped at the exact distance I had set. "Do you need anything?" I thought about all the possible answers. An apology had already been given. A war had already been survived. What I needed was smaller, harder, real. "Yes," I whispered. Ria went still. "Stay." No alpha in the world could have heard that as anything except a gift. Ria heard it as responsibility. "I will." I believed that too. Outside, the city kept moving like it had not almost swallowed me whole. Inside, my mother breathed steadily. My daughter's heartbeat still echoed in my memory, and the woman I had every reason not to trust kept her place by the door and did not ask for more than I could give. By morning, the world would still be messy. There would be investigations, statements, repairs, questions we had not answered, and wounds we had not healed. But Odessa had lost. Lyra had fallen. Celine was gone. My body was still mine. My daughter was still mine. And for the first time since I heard that hospital monitor argue with my heartbeat, the future did not feel like a sentence. It felt like something I might survive. When sleep finally pulled me under, I did not dream of cameras or council seals or women with claws hidden in pearls.